Not home.
Good to go.
I don't want to give you guys all an out already. I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight for the meeting. The objective of the meeting tonight is to update on local governance reform, new services, and to gain consensus on direction. As you know, we've discussed a lot of different things in the last month and a half. So we'd like to see if we can get consensus on some of that tonight. So we'll call the meeting to order. We have a quorum. I think we have 12 or 13 now. Is there any of the board members that have a conflict of interest that they would care to declare for tonight's meeting? Having heard none, we'll move forward on that. You've all had a chance to review the agenda. Could I have someone move that we adopt the agenda as presented? Wayne? Can I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Seconder, Heather, thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay, we'll start off with economic development, the delivery structure. And I'm going to turn that over to Hollis. And Hollis will be speaking on most of this tonight.
Okay, so I don't have a big, long presentation for the whole meeting, but I do have just a little bit to refer to. You've seen this slide before. This is about our role in economic development. The middle panel there, the RSC role. These are the things that a government, regional government, is asking their regional service commissions to take on as part of their mandate. So, where we sort of landed for our implementation of economic development is that the intention is that we would hire a coordinator, an internal employee, start January 2023. They would then identify some of the gaps in service delivery in the region, take a comprehensive inventory of the current state of offerings. So that's different groups in the region as well as municipalities. And then we're going to form a strategy of economic development for the region. So at that point, we would be engaging probably an outside consultant or some agency or some other group to help us with the actual strategic plan. And then they would then consult with community groups and municipalities and the board itself, define our KPIs and goals that we want to achieve, identify goals that align with the provincial mandate, RSC member direction. The reason I put that in there is because we may deviate a little bit and add things that the board may want to go in additional directions other than our base mandate, and then deliver that economic development plan to the board by Q3. So in other words, at the end of June of 2023, that plan should be ready. And then the second half of 2023, coordinate the efforts of existing and ongoing economic development groups that are in the region currently towards regional goals, and then use outside consultants groups and agencies as we need to accomplish the goals and projects that we need to get done. So that's kind of the high level plan. I also want to share this with you. I did a little poll around the province of how other regions are going to be delivering their economic development mandate. And we're split. A lot of them are internal, so very similar to exactly what I just laid out. Some of them are external. Miramichi is actually using City of Miramichi. Southeast, I believe, is 3+. I'm not sure on that one yet. St. John would be Envision. Capital is going to be, looks like Ignite, and Western Valley the same. And then we're, of course, at question mark until after tonight. It shouldn't be a question mark there. So that's what I really had for economic development. Mr. Chair, if you want to enable any discussion on this or going forward, I'm going to talk about the cost of this a little bit later on. That's part of our points later on in the agenda. But in terms of what we're doing, I think is what we're focused on right now. So in other words, we're going to plan to make a plan, and we're going to make a proper plan. And we're going to do this, you know, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right, but we need the time and the resources to actually look at this professionally and make a proper plan. And we are allowed that period of time at the first of the year to do that. So rather than try to figure out and guess what the best approach is today, which we're never going to get right for January 1st of next year today, this is going to take months to do, but I think it's the right direction, and this is kind of where we've landed. It's also probably the most cost-effective solution.
What you'll find is we sat down a little earlier this last week, and we tried to boil down everything that we've talked about as a board for the last month and a half. And this is kind of what's come out of that. So I would open the floor to any questions or comments that board members might have.
Stop sharing that so I can see the screen.
Okay. Everybody's happy with that?
I have a question.
Certainly, John.
So by listening to Hollis, it appears that horizon for our work and what we will create as an output would be to actually, first of all, agree to funding that one person and consultant for next year. Did I hear that correctly?
It'll be basically the one person.
One person.
Yeah.
So essentially,
Yeah.
so if I can interpret from that the exposure of additional costs associated with this mandated economic development from the province associates to the cost of one person.
Cost of one person, plus we're going to have to hire probably some outside agencies or consultants to help us with, you know, the public engagement piece and the any of the other the development of the strategic plan. We're going to have to have some professional help with that. So there's cost there too.
You have scoped this cost or not? It's about to be scoped.
We're going to talk about the cost, of the economic development. I think everybody will be pleased when they see what we're proposing. So I think everybody will be okay with that. Any other questions, comments on this portion of it?
Well, and that, you had showed the chart of the night Fredericton and stuff. I think that they were voted against the other night at their meeting. I think they voted not to go with Ignite. So how does that work out? I mean, as all the other things voted for their names, are they? All the other ones are done except Ignite and here.
As far as I know, the other regions, like there's a couple of regions that are actually already doing this. They have been for a couple of years up north. But as far as I know, everybody else has, and maybe Maurice, you might have better information than I do on the other regions, but as far as I know, everybody else is pretty much there. I know Fredericton's in a bit of a flux right now, but I think that's going to be fixed shortly.
There's a board meeting planned in Fredericton for a week yesterday. Ryan will attend that meeting, and our objective is to obtain consensus on delivery mechanisms for economic development and tourism promotion. And our expectation is that that consensus will be arrived at.
Wade, you had a question?
So Hall, where's the funding coming from for this?
Members.
We're going to talk about the funding aspect of that.
Yeah, I understand we got to add it to the budget, but right now there would be provincial money coming into these areas for these programs. It wouldn't be coming directly out of the taxpayers' pocket, even though it does. It's coming round through Fredericton. But what I'm saying is if the provincial government was putting so much money into it now, they should still be putting that much money into it with the new model.
The province is going to continue with the activities that it carries out through Opportunities New Brunswick at a provincial level. In addition to that, there's a regional mandate that we're talking about now. There will be 2 buckets of funding for that regional mandate. One bucket will come from post-secondary education, training and labor for labor force enhancement, growth, et cetera. And then that will be complemented by some funding that will come from the entities, which is really better known as RSC funding, which will complement the funding that comes from PEDAL. So that is the provincial money, if you will, that will contribute to your overall economic development budget.
Okay, so I'll wait and see what the numbers are at the end.
Thanks, Wade.
I think that's pretty well what, till we hear what the
Yeah.
thing is, it's mute, dispute this one, till we find out the
Yeah,
funding, what you had on that.
no worries. Yeah, and we'll get to that. Okay, oh, sorry. Yeah,
Well, there was some discussion about a board, you know, whether it would be a board of the CAOs or representative from each communities and business and so on. Is that something that will be considered later or?
Well, I think that that is a possible conclusion of the study that we do next year and of the research and whatnot that we do next year. It's entirely possible that's where we end. But we're not going to have that for January 1st. Right? We're going to do a strategy first, and the strategy might actually dictate that, yes, this is your best outcome, and then we have that to back it up. Right now, we don't have any of that data. We don't have anything to base that decision on. But it's entirely possible that that is the outcome.
good. Okay, thanks, Glenn. Okay, we'll move to the next one, tourism promotion discussion. And that's going to be Hollis again.
So tourism promotion, I know we haven't talked a lot about this. But the concept here, actually it's kind of close to the economic development thing, but we're going to use in-house staff that I'm going to reassign. So I'm actually not hiring anybody new for this in-house. And they're tasked with identifying the gap. I have a much more complicated document that pertains to this if anybody's interested, but this is the gist of it, that they're going to identify the gaps in our current service delivery and take some inventory of what's going on around the region now. And then the next step would be, we'd have to get some external data analytics company to collect some visitor data information. We don't have that. So if we don't know who's coming and who isn't coming, it's hard to do any kind of a promotion or marketing strategy. So we need to collect the data on the visitors that we have now, where they're going, where they're coming from, that type of thing. Then once we have that data, we can create a strategic plan for tourism promotion. That's based on the data we have, underserved markets, and the current offerings that we have. And that'll include marketing channels, planning for capacity building, identifying some gaps, some opportunities, and possibly regional branding. So this part here would be done by our staff member and an external consultant instead of hiring a whole bunch of staff internally. This seemed to be like the better plan. This would be completed again by the end of June. And then we can begin to implement that plan last half of 2023. And that would probably involve engaging a creative marketing agency as well to get this promotion done. So they would do the media buys and things like that as well. So we're not actually hiring anybody for this one. This is reassigning internal staff, but we do need to hire external companies to do these pieces. There's kind of 3 steps here to do these separate pieces.
Okay.
So Hollis, I'm kind of wondering why we wait this long before we start looking at what the inventory and the current in both in economic development and tourism. Why would we be waiting until next year before we start that? Shouldn't we be starting now and developing the strategic plan and getting the foundation of that done so that when we hit next year, instead of Q3, we're activating this in Q1?
Well, I don't have the budget for it this year, for number one, and I don't have the resources for it right now. That's probably the biggest hurdle right there.
And the provincial plan calls for all these services to come into effect officially on January 1, 2023. And the plan is that they'll be budgeted for in the budget that's currently being developed for 2023, so that the money will be allotted. And as soon as January 1 rolls around, you can then begin that work on developing the strategy. And you know, Hollis is suggesting that the strategy could stretch 6 months, and in fact, development could be over a 6-month period, and indeed that is the case. However, there's nothing that precludes the strategy being completed by end of April, for example. So if it can be accelerated in any way and be concluded prior to the end of April, there's every reason to believe that you could begin some of the work in implementing that strategic plan prior to July 1st.
Well, let's just make sure that any services that are in place right now for economic development or tourism stay in place and stay working towards this goal, and they don't just step down and step back because they don't know what's going to happen, right?
Well, the hope is that the plan that's going to be carried out at a regional level will complement what's already being done at the local level. That's the intent.
Yeah. Okay.
We've been very careful with that way. A lot like Future St. Stephen and RD, CDEC, those organizations are pretty much personality driven. I know everybody's heard me say that before. So we don't want to disrupt those organizations by introducing new individuals that may not be able to gel with the existing ones. So we're going to be moving very carefully forward on this. Any other questions on the promotion, the way we're looking at moving forward on this?
I had a question.
Yes, John.
Tourism promotion is not something new in the province. I mean, they used to be provincial responsibility. There were campaigns every year. They kind of scaled down during COVID, but there were all sorts of both in terms of creative advertisement and tourism centers in many places that they were promoting. So I'm just wondering, this regional undertaking, how it dovetails with the provincial commitment to promote tourism in the Brunswick. Is it then scaled down on the provincial level that's going to flow to us? Or?
Well, that would be part of the when we develop the strategy. So how we can leverage what the provincial offerings are and the local levels, like St. Andrews, for instance. How we can leverage what they've got, but do it on a region. But if we have a regional promotion, and I've said this before, so this isn't news to anybody. Let's say we brand ourselves South Shore, New Brunswick, and this regional product that we develop for branding is South Shore, New Brunswick. So we have province of New Brunswick has their what they call the invitation this year. I don't know what happened to that, and then each local municipality has their own. Like I know St. Stephen's got a thing on the go, and I know that St. Andrews does, and I know that different areas have their own local tourism product, but the regional product needs to fit nicely in with especially the local, but also the provincial. You're correct, but that would be part of that development of the strategy.
Okay, no other questions? Let's move on to community development and transportation. Okay.
So I attended Vibrant Communities AGM last week, actually. Very, very good bunch of people doing a lot of good work. We don't want to disrupt that, but the mandate is that we adopt the Community Inclusion Network, which in our case is Vibrant Communities, within the Regional Service Commission. And there's an MOU with ESIC that I have yet to sign, actually, but will be done shortly, where they provide some funding for that. They also provide direction and some strategy for their community inclusion networks around the province. So basically what's happening here is that Vibrant Communities becomes a part of the Regional Service Commission. The funding that ESIC would have flowed directly to that organization is going to come to Regional Service Commission instead. We handle the admin stuff, and that type of thing. Their board is very important, and it's an important group of volunteers. They've done a lot of really good work over the last years. We don't want to lose that, a lot of good tribal knowledge there. So the intent there is that that board transforms into an advisory committee to the Regional Service Commission. So they continue some of the work they've done, and they're unencumbered by the administration stuff that they have now. So that's, and my message, they asked me to speak at this AGM. So my message to them was that our intent is to not go backwards at all, to do nothing but enhance the service offering they have. So that actually is going to happen a little earlier than January. We're looking at November to transfer from them to us, but that's going to be a no impact to our budget this year.
And now, and by the way, I just want to add to that, Hollis, if I may, the reason it can begin earlier is because there is a transfer of some funding that comes to the RSC from ESIC, which allows you to begin that process prior to January 1st.
Okay. Any questions on this
I
item?
have a question.
Yeah, Dennis?
You said that you're gonna put that as an advisory committee?
Mhm.
No, but they'll still be their board, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, you're not changing, like, they'll still be called a board amongst themselves.
They probably will, but they really are going to be an advisory committee to this board.
Well, I just, stepping on somebody's toes where they've already got a board established.
I know, but I've been speaking with them for, I mean, I've known them for a while anyway, but I've been speaking with them about this for, probably a year, well, not a year, but at least since last December. And Sylvia, who's the chair of that board, and I were both on the provincial working group for this transition. So we worked together on making sure that it's going to be as smooth as possible. Yeah.
Oh,
But it is changing.
Somebody else had a, Bonnie, is that you? Did you have your hand up?
It is. I don't have I think this is a good concept overall. Maybe my concern would be a way to say this is I quickly looked at the board of directors for Vibrant Communities, and I'm not sure it's representative of the region as a whole. And I mean, this is one of the things, as you all know, I've struggled with is how Grand Manan in particular, but really the islands as a whole, how we fit into some of these mandates. And I just want to make sure that in adopting this and transitioning it completely over to the RSC, there is some sort of opportunity to make sure that we do fit into the process, because I'm just not 100% sure how we fit right now.
That's an excellent point, Bonnie, and it's something that I've been stressing to them, that, Vibrant Communities boundaries didn't exactly match ours. And I said, it has to match ours. It has to be our entire region. So no, it's an excellent point, Bonnie. And just because their current, there might be some rearranging, there might be opportunity for new members on there. So no, it's a great point.
My question was the same thing, what basically does Vibrant Communities of Fairleigh County look like the whole area? And don't forget Musquash, Pro, right?
Yeah.
Because that's a long ways from their present area.
Yeah, no, and I spoke with them about that. It has to match the new boundaries. They didn't see a problem with that. So.
Wade, you had a question? Comment?
Yeah, so funding once again, so this here says that the executive director of Vibrant Communities right now will become the RSC Community Development Coordinator. So that's another employee of the Regional Service Commission. Then you're going to hire another economic development coordinator, right? Okay, so that's, and right now ESIC is funding those positions, and ESIC will continue to fund that role, even though he's working for the RSC.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. I'm good.
Okay. If there are no other questions, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, committee structure.
Well, I got financial requirements.
Oh, sorry, I jumped one. Financial, the one you guys have all been waiting for, I tried to jump right over. Sorry about that. Financial requirements and opportunities.
Okay, so this isn't set in stone, but so tentatively what I have is for economic development, It looks like it's gonna be about 250,000. So that's external planning consultant, that's an internal employee, public engagement staff and cost. There's gonna be some pedal projects and things that pedal is gonna provide some funding for as well. So, and it's up to $8 per capita approximately. Again, that number isn't like a hard and fast number. So for us, that means about 230,000. Tourism promotion, I budgeted 250,000. So data analytics is probably going to cost us around 35. Our planning consultants probably going to be around 75, and then our creative agency cost is probably going to be around 90. And then there's some more costs because I have to allocate staff costs. So the staff that I'm assigning to this, it's an allocation, so it's not like a new person, but it does have to come under that budget. Community development. So ESIC is going to contribute 66,000, and plus their ongoing project costs. So there's a few things like some transportation initiatives. There was a food security thing. I can't remember all of the different projects they have to go, but those are all fully funded by ESIC. But I do need some kind of a budget because 66,000 probably isn't going to cover everything. Because don't forget, in each one of these budgets, what we're doing really here is creating 8 different budgets for the RSC. So community development will have a portion of, say, corporate costs. In other words, the cost of the CEO and our administration stuff. So we allocate our corporate costs to the various different budgets. So there's a little bit of that. There's, there may be at 66,000 might not cover the complete when you add in benefits and all that kind of stuff for salary. So I needed something in the budget there, so I put in 35. I've also added in public safety committee costs. We haven't really talked about that, but I'm meeting with Rhonda next week, and we're going to start getting that together. But there's going to be some cost to that committee. So 10,000. So the total budget for all of our new services that I've got is 545,000. So, yep.
Is the total budget 545 plus 230 or just 545?
545 plus the 230.
So the total budget is 775.
Yeah, that's better. Total contribution. That's a better way of putting that. Total member.
So it's one employee, 35,000 to the IRS for vibrant community stuff, right?
Yep.
One new employee and 35,000 to go to help with community development.
Mhm.
No employees in tourism, no employees in public safety. So it's one employee, but the cost is 775,000. Okay.
So
Hold on, you guys just made that a lot more unclear. Can we start that over?
Yep.
okay, so economic development. I budgeted $250,000 as a member contribution, not the pedal stuff, but a member contribution. And so that will include the cost for our external planning consultant, our public engagement stuff, our staff member, and the other costs associated with that. The pedal stuff is outside of, because they'll pay for what they receive in terms of project costs. Tourism promotion, I have budgeted 250,000. That would go 35,000 to a data analytics company, so we can get that piece done. The next piece is a planning consultant, probably going to be around 75,000. And to create the deliverables, which is our creative agency. So if they're creating, say, brochures, websites, digital stuff, whatever they're doing, I've got 90,000 in there. I also have to put our internal staff member in that budget. Okay, they don't work for free. So I'm just going to I'm reallocating. I'm actually reallocating this out of recreation. So
Okay, so then you also have to add the 66,000 into the budget as well.
Yes.
So you got to add the six. You got it. So it's another 66. So it's 836.
the stuff in green,
Yeah.
is stuff that we get from the government.
Yeah.
The stuff in black is the stuff that comes from members. So I'm talking about member contribution here.
Yep.
Community development, I put 35,000 as a member contribution to that bucket.
If I'd like to add there that 66,000 is only the bucket that's provided to help cover the cost of the coordinator. In addition to that, ESIC is providing with two $50,000 pots, one to assist with regional transportation that is effectively free money, not going to come from the member entities, and an additional $50,000 for additional work in the area of community development. So, and that's all amounts, those are all amounts that would be in green. Those are not amounts that would come from the member entities.
That's right. But there is going to be a little bit of an extra cost to the Regional Service Commission, so I've got 35.
You can't dip into those other two pots to help augment the 66,000 for the salary, which is why you're requiring 35,000 as a member contribution to cover additional costs for the employee.
That's right.
Can I
And
ask
then,
you what's the $8 per capita? What that means, $8 per capita?
where?
$8 per capita.
Oh, so, okay, I'll back up a little bit there. Petal has stated that their funding that's available for meeting their certain deliverables, their certain KPIs, their certain tasks that we need to get done. They're willing to deliver funding, and their funding is based on $8 per capita of the region. So if we have, 28,000 people, it's like $230,000.
And that funding has already been, an agreement has already been in place with that pedal funding for Envision in the Fundy region. And there's also an agreement in place with Ignite for the Capital region. And additional agreements will be struck with the other RSCs, regardless of whether that work is being done internally or whether it's farmed out to an agency like Ignite or Envision. And the $8 per capita is roughly the measure by which they come to a final amount, which in this case is about $230,000. And that complements the member contribution of $250. So effectively, you have almost $500,000 that'll go into economic development. And basically, the entities are only covering half of that cost.
So how long are those agreements good for?
It's a 10-year agreement with Envision in St. John and will be with Ignite in Capital Region as well. Now, I don't know how long the other agreements would be, but I would imagine they'll be 10 years. They may be 5, but at a minimum, it would be 5 in my view, but it may be 10 years as they are with the two agreements that have already been signed.
So the total requirement for members, and that's what I was going for here, is this $545,000, which represents, by the way, about 8% of our operating budget. And I know, and I really want to put a strong caveat on this, because I know we like to break this down on how much per $100 of assessment, and we speak about that quite a bit. Not everything is based on purely assessment. Sometimes it's 50% assessment, 50% population. But roughly speaking, this is what I've got here. So the $545,000 I'm going to require from members for this budget. Our tax base is $3 and 150 million, $3 billion, 150 million, works out to 1.7 cents per 100 of assessment for all of the new services. And when I compared that to, and Mo, you can back me up on this, but I compared that to some of the other regions, we're doing well. I think you said that Western Valley was around 2.25. I know that Northwest is around 1.8. I know that Kent is around 2. So we're right in the ballpark or on the low end of it.
Yeah, we're at about 2.5 in the Capital Region as well.
How much is that on $100,000?
$17.
$17.
Yes.
Back on your transport or your tourism part, you said that you're gonna use somebody internally for that. And you have to take like the staff portion of that out of the budget. So that's $50,000 you got to tack on there for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So actually our budget's coming down by that $50,000.
Yep.
Right,
That's
so
right.
you're not actually paying the 535, you're gonna subtract 50,000 out of that.
That's
I mean, that's on paper, but you're
Yeah.
not gonna be paying that on for members from here, you're not gonna give them double salary.
No, you're right. And so, but what this is what I was asked was how much are the new services gonna cost? Right? So that's actually what it costs, but you're right, we're actually gonna save on that.
$50,000.
Well,
It won't be coming up actually out of our budget because they'll be working on something else on these things that's budgeted for in that.
No, you're correct. But people, I've been asked, how much is this gonna cost? So,
Comments, questions?
Well, what?
Yeah, about how much it's gonna cost, the way it's done, really what you gotta look at is saying it, after all this is figured out, we take what the government transfers over and we take what the member's contribution is, how much does a $100,000 house go up in taxes? If it's $17, it's, that's what we expect, right? And that's what people need to hear. Like, us doing this, if we implement this the way it is next year, everybody that's got $100,000 home is going to have $17 more plus inflation. Everybody with a $200,000 home is going to have $34 added plus inflation for this.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
That's correct.
that's on average, but don't forget, this is also a budget. So if I budgeted $250,000 as a member contribution for economic development, and we don't spend $250,000, it comes back as a
Yeah, we will not spend it. I guarantee you. I'll be beating the trash of that, not the first year.
The other thing that I would point out is that if you take the roughly 500,000 that is the member contribution, and you add the 230 from Pedal and the 166 from ESIC, you're actually getting $900,000 worth of services for $500,000. For a $500,000 cost to the member entities, you're getting $900,000 worth of services. And that's if you don't apply for another penny of money from government. And in fact, I'm convinced there is money in various pockets. It's a question of trying to find where that money is over the course of the next 18 months, let's say. Potentially for maybe additional money for economic development, potentially additional money for tourism promotion, potentially additional money from social development for community development projects, etc.
You should be a used car salesman.
The problem.
Well, actually, interesting that you mentioned that. I actually sold a used car salesman named Frank McKenna. So, but what I'm telling you is true. I mean, it's exactly the case. And
It sounds like a good deal.
We've got to
It
look
sounds
at
like a good deal, but there's still $500 and some $1,000 more of taxpayers' money is going to be spent here.
No
That's
question.
the bottom dollar.
No question. You're absolutely right. with that. There's no spin that's going to counter that. You're absolutely right. But for a cost of 500,000, no one can challenge the fact that you're getting at a minimum $900,000 worth of value for it, which is
And all paid for by the taxpayer. That other 400,000 is not free.
But I get that, But the reality though is that this municipal reform is happening, and so we're left with how do we make the best of this situation? And frankly, I think Hollis is to be commended, and Ken as well, to have come up with a program that, frankly, I think is pretty fair and reasonable.
And so do I. My comment was not aimed at Hollis or anybody else. I'm just getting tired of hearing about free money.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
We this business of in investment, and it's this and it's that.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
None of the money is free. We are all paying for it. So
Absolutely.
if we
No
pay
question.
another $17 through our taxes to the RSCs, what's to say that the provincial government will not up the tax rate on their end to cover the other 400,000 next year?
Was that hard?
Okay, so let's just be clear about this stuff. We're not putting anybody down.
Oh, yeah.
We just want things clear.
Sorry, Alan, somebody was saying, Alan's got his hand up. I couldn't see you up there for the life of me. So, Alan, what do you got?
Well, I'm gonna tell you, this meeting has made this more confusing than it's ever been, but we gotta be confused before we get it right. But I'm really struggling with the fact that we're talking about a bigger budget and raising taxes. And and I know I've said this before and I'll say it again. I'm only going to talk for St. Stephen because that's the only budget I know at this time, but I cannot have the taxes raised in the town of St. Stephen to make up this money because I'm going to discourage development by raising the taxes. So if the money is, like you say, when you say the money is going to be recouped, so you're getting a return on it, then we shouldn't have to raise the taxes. I'm game for that. But I'm not seeing that in this discussion, or not hearing it.
I have another question.
Well,
I'd like to have an answer first, but
yeah, let's see if we can get an answer to Al's question there first.
What's your question exactly,
I
Al?
don't know what the question is.
I want to know if you're asking me to raise the taxes to pay this service when I'm already paying for the service already.
You're paying for a provincial service in the area of, for example, economic development. Okay. As part of the municipal reform piece, the province has two components. One, bringing entities together to create a fewer number of entities in the province. And the other side of the equation is mandating the delivery of certain services on the RSCs. One of those services happens to be economic development. Another one happens to be tourism promotion, and we've gone through the list. All of the RSCs, all of them, including this one, but all of the other 11 are going through the same process as is going through here now in identifying the most effective and efficient delivery mechanism and identifying the number of dollars that they feel would be advisable to invest in the delivery of those services. At the end of the day, because this is an exceptional year, we're in a transition period from the municipal structure that existed in the province in 2021 and 2022 to what it's going to look like in 2023. In this exceptional year, the minister will be approving the budget at the end of the day for each of the RSCs. So we will be making a recommendation that will go to the minister what should be invested in each of the RSCs. That's basically how the process is going to work. So it's not a matter of saying that in this RSC, well, we're not going to identify any money because we're already paying for it locally or what have you. We are going to be making an investment in each of those services for 2023. Once the elections take place at the end of November, there'll be a whole new board that'll be formed effective January 1. And if they want to look at how they can scale up or scale down any of those services, it'll be entirely their responsibility to do that, should they choose. If they want to maintain that for the entirety of the 2023 year, they can do that. And then going forward, they can adjust either up or down as they wish for 2024 and the years going forward. So it's not a matter like we can, oh, well, we're just going to opt out because we're already paying for this in some other way. I mean, that's unfortunately, in this circumstance, not an option, Alan. I don't know if I answered your question, but
okay.
If I didn't, try me again.
Okay, so you explained very well what's going on and what's going to happen. I understand that, and I already did understand that. My point is, we're and I'm not criticizing this is going to happen. I'm just saying you're asking us to raise a budget line and raise our taxes to cover that budget line, and that's a recipe for disaster. I was told when this started that when we're all in the same pool here, the cost should go down. And here we are raising the cost already. And whether I had the service before or not, that's one thing, but I also have oh Jesus. Anyway, I understand where we're going.
I just don't understand, Alan, how you can have a provincial government that mandates that RSCs are going to carry out a number of additional services, and that there's going to be no cost attached to that, either by the provincial government or by the entities. I just don't understand how you can adopt a half a dozen new services, deliver those services, and the money's going to come from, I don't know where. The money's going to have to come from somewhere. So the province is contributing some in a number of these different areas, and the balance, based on the budget projections that are taken by the leadership of the RSC and the board, will cover the additional costs through costs that are going to be borne by the entity governments. You got that? So I can
Well,
repeat it.
I understand that this is being, and listen, I'm not anti this whole thing, but I just,
Understand.
I'm a little discouraged that when I'm already paying for services in St. Stephen. So if I stop services and jump on the bandwagon here, then it should be even Steven, we move on. But I'm not seeing that.
But yeah, I guess the reality that we're in is that the province has mandated that these RSCs are going to deliver these services. The intention is that these services are not going to duplicate what's already happening at the provincial level, nor are these services intended to duplicate what's happening at the municipal level. These services are intended to be delivered at a regional level because at the present time, they are not being delivered at the regional level. That's the ultimate intent of these new services being implemented at the regional level by the RSCs.
But common sense would tell you that if you took economic development in areas like if you took the Blacks Harbor, St. George area, St. Stephen, St. Andrews, and Macadam, and said all of the costs right now and all the services for economic development, community development, and for tourism, right? They're all spending money on that now. And you're going to centralize the service. You're going to get an economy of scale, right? So it should be cheaper, or it should be certainly cost neutral. So what's happening? What's the difference?
And if those entities choose to not continue carrying out economic development activities locally, obviously there'll be a saving there because they're presumably currently investing in those services being delivered locally. And part of that, maybe all of that amount of money can go towards the contribution that entity will have to make to the RSC for the implementation or the execution of these services across the region. And as part of the development of the strategy, for example, part of the development of the strategy on economic development, if somebody said to me, and I'm not going to be doing it, nor is anyone going to ask me, but if somebody were to ask me to develop the strategy, the first thing I would do is I would visit every community in the Southwest region, and I would have a long discussion with them to understand the opportunities and challenges that are faced economically within that community. What are the things that we should be looking to do regionally that will have a benefit regionally, but will also have a benefit locally? So, you're right. You can save some money locally, and you can use that money to contribute to the pot of money that will be generated regionally to cover those services across the region.
So right now, I'm going to talk about economic development for a second. When I have a staff member that we contract out for economic development, and we also have a board. And where does that board fit into this new regional development board?
Well, I think as was mentioned earlier by Hollis, I don't think that's been defined completely at this point. And that's going to be part of the process of developing the strategy and the governance model around that strategy. We're kind of trying to deal with who's going to deliver the service or how is the service going to be delivered. That's an important decision that we need to arrive at tonight. And secondly, Hollis wanted to give you an impression or an idea rather of what kind of cost implications the delivery of these services, both being done internally by the RSC, what those implications were going to be on the overall budget for the RSC. That was the intent.
The only thing I'd like to clarify, because I know we're talking about municipal and realizing cost savings through economy of scale and things like that. And Al's talking about Future St. Stephen and the things that they do. So Future St. Stephen and what it does is still a municipal responsibility. It's not going to be a regional service commission thing. So we're talking about industrial parks, and we're talking about things like that, not regional service commission. That is municipal. And I'm just going back to these three panels, which kind of clearly delineate the provincial responsibilities, the regional service commission's responsibilities, and the municipal responsibilities. It is possible through our defining the strategy that we figure out that we can save municipalities money by providing that municipal service is almost like a shared service or a voluntary service. It is possible that that is an outcome, but I wouldn't bank on it, and it's not, doesn't really fall within the regional, the minimum required mandate. However, just because it doesn't fall within that mandate doesn't mean we can't do it. And if we can do it for, St. George and St. Stephen and St. Andrews and McAdam, and combine on a single that would save them money, maybe that's an outcome. I'm not sure. But I just want to clarify this, that there are municipal responsibilities and regional service commission responsibilities.
But municipal responsibilities cost taxpayers money. That's the point I'm getting at. And I'm just gonna make one more comment. Why are we even talking about this if it's already set in stone? Let's just do it. Whoever's that we is doing this, just do the damn thing and leave us the hell out of it, because I'm getting frustrated.
Okay, Winston had a question comment.
No, I just, when they started talking about cost, another $18. If I might be wrong in this, but I had figured out that the LSDs are gonna pay a lot more than $18 because they're gonna pay for administration, the office space, counselors, mayor, and the whole works. So I think that's just another thing that's been thrown on them is this $18, and then this 5 years thrown on. And if you hire one person to look after the whole RSC 10, and he has to work with a volunteer committee, is he gonna cover St. Stephen, or is he gonna cover Blacks Harbor, or is St. Andrew? Who's he gonna cover? Because one person can go around and ask everybody what they think, just like you said in tourism. What brings people to the area? Well, what brings jobs to the area or companies to the area? Well, St. Stephen seemed to have done a hell of a job on it. They had 150 something, I think, over the last couple of years or so, new businesses. But where does that leave the rest of them? Are you gonna leave one out in place of the other, or can people opt out of it,
The way I kind of look at this endeavor is, and I don't know how much it's gonna cost. Like, this is an estimate for what it's gonna cost next year. I don't know what it's gonna cost in 2024. Hopefully it will cost less, not more, John. But I think we have to go through the exercise. One of the things that I have a great deal of issue with as a mayor is that I have no idea what's going on in St. Stephen. I have no idea what's going on in the other communities. And we need to know what each of our communities are doing so that we can capitalize on the economic development that's going on in each location in our area. When it comes to tourism promotion, I've talked to quite a few people around and said, how do we develop a broader perspective on tourism? Well, you can't do that in silos. We have to have somebody that's going out to all the various communities and trying to determine what it is we are trying to capture in tourism. I spoke with Bonnie about some ideas that they had. I spoke to some other people about ideas that they had. And I can see that once you start talking to various communities, you can see how those things can be integrated to create a better whole. And so to give you an example, I tried talking to a bus company about coming into McAdam to do the train station tour and then go down to St. Andrews and do a tour at Minister's Island. Because the way it works is bus companies like to have 2 venues that they can go to with a couple of meals, and that seems to be the recipe for success. Well, McAdam doesn't have that all by itself. Maybe St. Andrews does, maybe, I don't know whether St. Stephen does or not. But if we could talk to these organizations, tour ships, for example, when they come up into this region, should they just be going to St. or St. John or Halifax? What about the smaller outports? Why aren't they going there? Have we spoken to them about the benefits that we could have here within this region? So for me, having this regional perspective, I think we can gain from that financially. I know it's gonna be a little money up front, but I want to see whether it's viable money that's being invested. If we're not investing it properly and we're not getting our money back out of it, then I say, hey, it's out of there, but let's try it first and see if we can make it work to our benefit.
Well, I'm gonna start with a point that at some point someone mentioned about sales, somebody doing a sales job here. And there is no selling because, I mean, it is, this is it, you got to buy it. Let's be clear about that. And we're here because somebody said, no, this, you got to buy it. So that's one thing. When it comes to our role and our bargaining ability to negotiate with mandated services that we got to have, I was just wondering if this board has any capacity to actually say, hey, we'll not make it $10 per $100,000. Go and try with 5 for the first year to see how it goes. So one of the things that I would have liked to actually hear is if there is any leeway for this board here with this government there to actually negotiate scaling down this initial thing. Another point I want to make is,
Sorry, John, when you say scaling down, what do you mean exactly?
Hollis gave us his estimates.
On the financial side,
On the financial.
not on the responsibility side, okay.
On the financial side. So I'm just, being concerned representatives of taxpayers who right now are suffering, and we are going through a darker days, it looks like, where essentially change may not be palatable. I was just wondering if we have any capacity to actually lower what holds as a board. If we think, for example, the $10 is a higher number, can we actually go back and say, well, maybe we can try to actually squeeze some things out? Because the next step that my experience working for 30 years in the government is, if you create one office with one person, the next year there's going to be a strong case to have 2 people there. They're going to do a better job with 2 people. And there's going to be another proposal coming down, be $10, maybe it should be 15 the next year. The third point, the other thing that I have not heard from anyone so far saying is, what is the expected return for this $10 that we're going to be spending? I know that's an investment. I know that, down the road they're going to be, but have we actually put some expectations that our tourism, as a result of that, within the next 4 years, because we are paying this extra $10, is going to go up by X%? And everything accounted, a recession or whatever, but somehow we can try to quantify what are we going to get out of this money. And
Can I address that one?
Yeah.
We can't because we haven't done the work yet. So that's what I'm proposing here, is that we do the work to figure out what, if we invest, how much is the right amount to invest and where to invest it and what the return would be. That's the whole part of the studying the market, the marketing study and the work that we need to do at the front end to figure out exactly what the return would be. But it's almost, you can't do it unless you do the work. So you can't figure out what the return is going to be until you actually do the work to figure out what that return is going to be. Putting the cart before the horse, I guess, is the saying.
But presumably the grand masters of this whole exercise should have some.
I would put my faith in our own abilities and our own work going forward, rather than, no offense, Ro, but I'm not going to put my faith in the provincial government to tell me that the answers.
I don't work at the provincial government on a full-time basis. It's true that I'm engaged to help facilitate this work, but I'm not an employee of the provincial government. I will say, though, just further to what you were saying, Hollis and John, that these numbers have not just been picked out of the air. And I don't say that defensively. I say it because it is the reality. Hollis has looked around to see what similar size regional service commissions are doing in the areas that are listed here. And we're trying to do something that's comparable to what's being done in other similar sized regional service commissions. And it can't be that they're all wrong. I mean, I won't accept that. It may be that it's difficult right now, as Hollis was saying, to define exactly, precisely to the penny what the ROI is going to be. However, I would submit that if half a dozen similar sized RSCs are putting in this amount of money or even more, that in fact, we're probably in the right ballpark with the estimates that we've got that Hollis has run through for the contributions that we feel are appropriate for each of the delivery of these services.
Dennis,
Just a point I want to bring up, $750,000 we were talking about that's coming back next year is surplus, is it not?
Solid waste, yeah.
Yeah, and wasn't we wondering how we were gonna get that back in, and it talked about one time going back to municipalities for whatever they wanted? Well, that way you're cutting out all the RSCs that paid into that part of there. Why not take that money that's coming back out of there and fund part of this?
So that surplus we're into this year. Not gonna be much of a big surplus next year, I can tell you that right now.
But you was wondering what you were gonna do with it, or we were before at a couple of finance and audit committee meetings.
we had agreed that 50% of the surplus would go into the municipalities and potentially the LSD for environmental projects. The other 50% would go into our long-term savings. That's what we had agreed to at the board level. Whether you wanted to change that or not.
I can't remember it being passed at the board table.
Let's table that for next week's committee meeting.
That's fine, yeah.
We're gonna have a. We'll talk next week.
Okay.
So I just want to comment on how they developed the province. Said they developed the numbers from RSCs. They didn't just grab them from the air. But I do want to clarify that not every regional service commission is the same, and each regional service commission has different municipalities that go into it and have done different things, and some they've done very well, and some they do need help with. So I want to clarify those numbers are just numbers. Anyone can make up a chart with numbers. So it is different. So we do need some tweaking. That's for sure.
Yep, and I do want to remind everybody, these are budget numbers, right? So, like I said, if there's 250,000 member contribution plus the 230,000 from pedal that we could put into economic development, but we don't spend, we spend half of that, it comes back as a surplus. It's not money that's gone. So when we talk about, let's try to save some money on some things, certainly. But knowing what I know about what these things are going to cost, I think I'm not far off.
What are you going to do with your surplus, and how's that going to affect my entity that I'm going to be part of, if I'm lucky enough to be part of it?
If there's a surplus in the economic development bucket, then it comes back to that, the second year following. So then that budget is that much smaller, and then your bill is that much less.
Okay.
That'd be the same thing with the rest of them too, right?
Yep.
They're all like silos.
Yeah, there's like 8. We used to have just solid waste and then local planning, and we had a regional cooperative. Now we got like 8 of them.
Yeah.
So
one question I want to ask, because I heard that some other entities have actually done long-term commitments on the plan. Like they have contracts for 10 years. I heard for some. I just one of my concerns is that if this creature does not walk as the designers are expecting to walk, what kind of stranded costs may be associated with our experiment? So far what we have discussed, all is a 1-year plan with no commitments for the next 3, 4, 5 years. So that is one thing I want to be clear, that this is just for the next year. Yeah,
Right.
that is.
One of the things that we'll discuss when we get into committee structure is how that can be remolded. If we find that our initial structure doesn't work, but we need to have an initial structure that we can move forward with. And then we'll see how that works once we have the new number of mayors and whatnot next year, that 8-member board. So it'll be interesting to see how that structure works in that period. But if it doesn't work well, then we'll modify it. We'll make it work in some other fashion. Yeah. But we
And I
need
think
to
it's,
start-
I think it's important to recognize as well that the model that you've chosen to deliver economic development and tourism promotion, which are the two biggest envelopes of dollars, is the most prudent delivery mechanism of the three. Either doing it through the RSC, doing it through a third party, or some combination of both. The one that is clearly the most prudent, the most risk-free, is the one that you've chosen. So it does put your commitment to dollars a little bit at risk in terms of having to engage, for example, in Fundy. They're going to have to engage over a lengthy period of time with Envision to deliver those services. So they're going to be effectively locked in for a 5 or 10 year period, whatever the case might be. In this instance, as has been said, because you're doing it through the RSC, partway through next year, if it's determined that too much money was allocated, then that'll go into surplus for the following year. And similarly, if it's felt that it's not enough money, then in the budget that's being developed in 23 for 24, additional dollars can be added. But it's the flexibility of the internal delivery mechanism that I think is a big advantage to the Southwest.
I'm a little unclear on what he means, but we've already chosen.
Sorry,
What have we chosen?
we haven't chosen anything yet, but we're going to discuss it on the next one. Yeah, but we're hoping you'll go in a certain direction.
Well,
Because we've already discussed it over the last, like a month and a half.
we had a discussion last week.
Yeah.
On 2 models. That's not a month and a half for me. That's one.
Well,
meeting.
that's 1 week, but
That's one meeting. Okay.
we've been working on it for a while. And I think from what we took from last week was a consensus. We think we've got it, but we're going to discuss it tonight.
Okay, so that's coming up then.
Nothing's set in stone here. Glenn, did you have your hand up? Okay, sorry. Yeah. Any other questions on the financial requirements and opportunities?
Yes.
Al?
We've run into this situation before, but let's just say we make all the decisions, we have this great plan we think is going to work, and the new entity gets elected, entities, and let's say the entity decides not to be part of this game. What happens?
Well, that's probably a pretty good question. If you decided to withdraw from it, my understanding is that all financial, how do I phrase that, the grants and everything, the monies that are spent by the province come through the RSC for economic development. So if you chose, I would suspect, to rescind your position within our economic development, you would be probably negatively impacted in some fashion. That's just guesstimate on my side,
But there's no option, there's no opt out here.
no.
They just
No.
cut you off. That's it.
Yeah. I think you're more blunt than I am, Wade.
I just have issues with the fact that you say it can't happen, because it has happened with our board before. You know, we've had people that, some mayors couldn't even vote on our budget because their council wouldn't let them. So it can happen.
Yeah, I have no doubt, Alan, it could happen. What the ramifications of that would be with any detail, I cannot give you at this time.
That's a very good point. I just want to add, if I'm allowed, the fact that we are now the board, okay? The councils are not necessarily engaged in approving or commenting on the numbers. So, like, to some extent, we are working without the support of our councils by speaking around here about for or against the numbers. So that by itself is against the act. There's an act about local governance which says that the mayor represents the will of the council, nothing more and nothing less. So even, you know, so it's a, things can happen after November, where a new council comes up and has shown ideas about what may or may not be. Another provincial election may come and maybe other things happen. But you know, the question is what we are deciding here binds, as I say, the first year of the next council. That's the scope of it. And what I ask Hall to clarify that we don't commit to something that's going to extend beyond the first year, which
I'd have to go back though and say, the budget meeting is next week.
Yes.
And so there's a whole schedule of events that take place along with that budget. So the draft budget will come out to everyone next week. And then everybody around the board has to take that back to their councils to go back down through that. So it's not a done deal. It's it still has to be approved.
No, it doesn't.
No,
Well,
Not this year.
no.
Not this year.
So just for clarity here, the reason that budget looks a lot different is that there's no vote on this budget. This budget is approved by the minister, just this year. But normally, in fact, so, you know, it's the same with these services, but what we're trying to do is we want consensus from the current board. I mean, probably 7 out of the 8 board members of next year are already on this board, is what I'm guessing. It's at least 5 for sure. But we want, because we want, you know, we don't ram stuff down people's throats and then next year it becomes a complete disaster. That's the last thing we want to do. So that's what we're looking for, is consensus on the direction and the budget itself and comments and feedback on the budget, so that that's the fair thing to do. But the ultimate approval does not rest with this board this year. Just so I'm clear.
but in follow-on years, we will be voting on this budget.
Yeah.
So the new board that sits will have the opportunity to vet this budget, to determine whether or not how much we spend on each of these items. Yeah. Sorry, Harvey, you got your hand up?
This 1.7 cents per hundred or whatever, that's on top of what we already pay the RSC, right? Like for recreation and all that stuff.
Yes.
We're gonna have to put our budget up a lot this year, so we're gonna be well hated down here on the island, but we never, the clerk didn't know about the recreation, as you know, last year, so we got blindsided with that one, and then now we've got to change our whole garbage situation in the next couple of years, so we're really gonna be loved by the taxpayers before it's over. So anyway, I just wanted to know that was all I wanted to know, if it was on top of, just so I can be prepared.
Thanks, Harvey. Any other comments on this one?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I just want you guys, I want everyone here to visualize the fact that you're gonna have a mayor that goes to this board at the Regional Service Commission, but he or she is going to be led by a new council of an entity, and not just their town anymore, an entity, which is new rural councilors. So we're going to be struggling with that alone, trying to marry us together. And now you're going to be asking us to take this role on, and the mayor could come out to this board when we've seen it happen, totally support what everyone is saying around that board table. But if his council doesn't let him or him or her, he can't. So like, I hope you guys are seeing down the road a little bit. I know they're trying to force us to work together, but I think we're ramming too much down their throats at the first shot. I think we should have just amalgamated and left this later. This is too much. I mean, look at Campbell just a minute ago. I mean, how are they going to absorb this? You know, that's just one example. It's too much, guys. It's too much all at once. We got to slow down, you know, and do the amalgamation first. You know, like this was not part of my discussion when I met with the minister when this amalgamation was happening. None of this that we're doing, bringing us all to the Regional Service Commission. This should be done and voted by democracy by the entities. They should be voting on what they want, and they're not. We're just gonna get a plan that we all sitting around the table think that we have a part in when we still don't. We're just sitting here fighting with each other over something that we don't even know is going to happen. It's going to happen regardless. And you're turning me into this guy that is talking like I am right now. That's never talked like this before. Like I've never been negative, and this just feels wrong. It feels wrong. We're not. It's not a democratic way of doing things. It's all wrong.
Thanks, Alan. Maurice, were you gonna say something? And then I'm going to Bonnie.
No, I wasn't. No, thank you though.
Okay, Bonnie?
I just want to echo what Alan is saying and some of the struggle, understanding what the RSC is. And maybe this is just given our geographic location as much as anything. But coming from as a new mayor with a very new council a year ago, it is a real struggle for us to understand what the RSC is for our new councilors and what benefit we're getting. And part of that is obviously our geography, because we don't fit into a lot of these initiatives and a lot of the things that the RSC does. And I think, what I hear Alan saying is that he is very concerned that facing a new entity with new councilors who aren't going to understand, they don't have the history that a lot of the people around the table do, is how do you convey to them what the RSC is, what the RSC is trying to do, and what the advantages for the entities are. I think that at some point in this process, we need to talk about how we communicate, not just to the mayors, to the people sitting around this board table, but how we help mayors like myself communicate what the RSC is to the council as a whole and to the communities, because I don't think beyond this group sitting around the table, that's necessarily always well understood. And now facing a whole new batch of councilors and people participating around those tables, I think we have to look at how we do communicate that out.
Can I what I want to say to that, Bonnie, and this goes for Al and any other mayor or representative of municipality. And when I say municipality, I include rural district, because it's really essentially another municipality. Let me know how I can help with that problem if I can. I don't know that I can. If it requires me visiting your council at a meeting to talk to them about issues and things like that, I'm open to that. Whatever you need me to do, if it's within my power, I'll help you with that. I don't know, but maybe there's ideas that I don't know to help with that. But if there is, let me know.
Okay, Jamie?
Yeah, thank you. I guess a moment ago you'd mentioned that future budget discussions will be able to be voted upon by board members. I'm just curious to know if the idea behind that would be those votes would be coming as a result of council debate in each one of our areas, or would that be the idea is that the vote would come independently?
Normally, in the past, it's been from a mixture of those things, but it's usually a council debate, so that budget will get circulated to councils, like in a normal year, past years. I would circulate that to the CAO and the mayor, and then that gets to the council, and then they usually, they should review it with their council. And then the mayor comes to this table as a board member and votes yes or no.
Okay.
But I just have a question on that.
Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
So, and if that's the case, any actions that as a result of the vote, whether it be majority or not, apply equally though to all those 8 members, whether they vote for it or not. Is that correct?
I would say yes.
Yeah, okay, because that's important, because, and I note that Alan mentioned there was a mayor that wouldn't vote on budgets because of the council. I brought that up one night, when we were talking about rec, that I was shunned and told, oh, don't bring that up here. But it did happen, so Alan's 100% right. But yet, that municipality still gains from the vote we took on the recreation. So the majority vote, well, the vote, no matter what the vote is, will affect all entities equally. Just because the council votes not to vote for it or not to go with it, it's still it's not gonna make any difference. That's all
Well, I know when I first started with the RSC, it explained out to us as representative of LSD and the municipalities, that we're all supposed to put them aside. You're going there, you're not voting for your LSD, you're not voting for your municipality, you're voting for what's coming before this board.
That's right.
Not municipalities, what they want, or their council wants. The mayor's supposed to sit here and take everything in, and then he's supposed to make his own judgment here. It goes to their council and they can read it over, and they can suggest to them. But when it comes down, push comes to shove, it should be every mayor in here should be thinking of it themselves in the rural area. They're the ones that are supposed to vote, and they're supposed to be voting as a group here in this RSC. That's the way that it was explained to us when I first moved.
Question, comment?
Go ahead, Al.
I hear what you're saying, but we're not just talking about waste anymore. That's not the service we're providing. We're providing services other than waste. We were discussing waste going to a landfill, the only landfill we had. That's a whole different, like, I'll put it this way. If I was to ask Jamie Hurdle right now how he feels about us taking control of his tourism file, and they're already invested deeply into it, and it's very important to St. Andrews, just like economic development is to me. I bet you they'll tell you a different story, because they need that, their community relies on tourism, and I definitely understand their tourism affects us neighboring communities too. So it is important to work together and maybe share what we're doing. But again, Jamie's gonna have a council that's gonna tell them a different story too. And what if it's not going their way and they want out, say, no, it's not working. We need to get back into the way we were doing things as of now. And what happens?
I don't think there's no intent here to get into the pants of the tourism group that are working in the town of St. Andrews. I think what the effect of this is that we can share the information that they're working with in St. Andrews amongst the region. So I look at it from the example of, Jamie, can you tell me how many people come through your village or your town in the run of a year? I remember Doug Nation thought it was around 80,000 per year. How does that number stack up?
We're talking about Doug's time or the last couple of years. We saw a decrease, but we're pretty much back to that now.
About 80,000.
Give or take.
So I look at what's going on in St. Andrews, and then I take a look at what's going on in McAdam. I get 35,000, 40,000 visitors to the station every year. I've got a Glassworks guy coming in. He's probably going to get 10 to 15,000 visitors per year. Then I look at my gun dealer. He's getting 10 to 15,000, people coming in there buying guns. I have a lot of foot traffic coming through McAdam. How do and I intend to make the downtown core of McAdam into an artisan's village. And I've already talked to the groups in St. Andrews, the Artisans Union there. I've talked to a bunch of people in Ontario and elsewhere. But what I don't have is the expertise that they have on tourism and how I get that started. So as a region, I think we can draw on the strength of other organizations within our boundaries to grow the region as a whole. And that's what I'm kind of hoping for from this tourism development. St. Stephen's the same way. St. Stephen's got a ton of things there that we could be developing from a tourism perspective. A basketball court just springs to mind right off the top. that will appeal to a lot of basketball players around the world that might like to come and visit that. But how do we capitalize on it? So we need to take advantage of a regional perspective on how we develop that. That's just my thoughts on it, Alan. I don't think this board intends to get into anybody's shorts on how they're doing it locally. It's how do we develop that local expertise into a regional expertise to help others.
I agree with all that. Actually, I totally agree with working together on it. But I just think we got to call a spade here and say there's going to be a cost in both areas. And that's the part that I'm struggling with. Like I need to show, if I'm going to get a service from the RSC, I got to be able to get the same service I'm getting now, or a better service. I can explain a better service costs more money, and then explain that to my council. But yeah,
I kind of look at it this way too, Alan. When we first started out, we got together 4 or 5 years ago. Maybe it was 6. I can't. My memory's going. But we sat down and we said, how can we develop ourselves regionally? What else can we do besides, the garbage and that kind of recycling, that kind of stuff. One of the things that we came up with was building inspectors. I know in St. Andrews, I don't know, they were paying an exorbitant amount of money to engineering firms to come in and do building inspection. I think you were spending a fair bit of money as well. And by hiring, I know I couldn't even get one. So for me and my community, having the Regional Service Commission go out and bring that building inspector in, then I now could get that building inspection done when I needed it done, and I could get it done at a cheaper rate than going outside the community and trying to hire an engineer. So for example, our community for planning and also for building inspection, I think my bill based on per capita is around $17,000 per year. So even though it's costing me $17,000 a year, it's a service I now have that I couldn't get before. And it's much cheaper now for the larger municipalities than it would have been prior to that. At least that's my suspicion, is that it's cheaper. So it worked out economically in our benefit to join that organization and become more regional. I'm kind of hoping that's what we find when we move into this economic development. Even though we're, and tourism, as though we're moving a little money in, but I'm hoping that that money spent will come back to us so that we can decrease our budgets elsewhere by that 1.7% because of the extra earning power that the village will have, or your community will have, maybe 2 or 3 years down the road.
yeah. I get what you're saying there, but again, we're talking about a service that we all need and you have to have or use. But when we're talking about tourism, when we're talking about economic development, yes, we all need it, but we all have different value add to that. Like we have more, some of these topics are more important to each area in this region. So that's the part I struggle with. It's not like we all have waste or we all have building services and all that sort of thing. Policing would be the same, basically. Although some need more policing than others, so that'd be a whole other story. But anyway, but there is a different value that each community will have to put into each thing. More, some would put more into tourism, some will put more in economic development. You know, that's the difference.
Quick question.
John?
Quick question. There is no question that there are, I guess, called them niches of expertise. I mean, for some reason, St. Stephen has got a glowing review for its economic development performance over the last few years, and Mayor McKechnie is tooting the horn every time he's talking. Same with St. Andrews, they are doing a very good job with tourism. I just wonder if there is any thought about getting what is working best in our regions and see if we can actually try to see who can use that expertise to cover the areas that they have not traditionally covered. For example, I don't think that St. Andrews has ever come up to the place or to St. George to actually say what kind of synergies we can develop here. Okay, so that is something that you have not mentioned, Hollis, but maybe it should be part of a discussion that you can have with Alan and St. Andrews there to see what if it can be part of the equation as opposed to actually to what we have heard so far.
Again, there's a lot of things that need to be worked out. I just want to make sure that as an organization, my job is to make sure that this organization is equipped to take on the tasks and effectively perform them. I can't do a bare minimum job on everything, just enough to pass the provincial SNP test on, yeah, okay, we check the box, did some kind of economic development or whatever. But we also can't go overboard, so I need to make sure that we're equipped well enough to be able to take that on. That's kind of what I'm trying to lay out here.
I'm going to ask Alan, if I may, I'm going to ask Alan, can you provide any service to the greater, can you essentially provide services to RSC and get credits for that? Can you provide services to the RSC on economic development for the whole region and get credit for that? That will appease your taxpayers and maybe you can do a better job than anybody else in the Sheraton. Have you ever thought about that? To come to this board and give us a proposal?
I mean, it could be done. If we're talking about economic development, first of all, we got to be clear. I'm going to talk about Future St. Stephen for a second. Future St. Stephen was developed because of the province and the feds not doing the work. We had to take action ourselves. That's how that was developed. So now we're turning it into a provincial thing again. But anyway, could we do it? All we need is one hired president of the organization and board members from each area. Yes, it could be done. But you'd have to have, you have to bring your piece with you. Like they have to sit at the board table of the development board that would work through the well, not a CEO, but the president of that board, the paid person. If that makes sense.
And that could be, again, that could be one of the outcomes of what we discover the first part of next year is that that might make sense, just like we talked to other providers as a possibility. It's entirely possible that there is an outcome like that. I just don't. I'm not even going to pretend like I know that that's the answer.
So have we had enough on that conversation? We'll move on. Alan?
Yeah, I just say that you can mix it all up and make a cake. I just don't know if I'd want to eat that cake.
Thanks, Alan. Committee structure, we'll move into that.
So I think that was left over from the last two meetings that we would have got to on the agenda. But I just wanted a brief discussion on the committees that are going to be required for these things. So there's, we know what the committee is for community development, or at least what the basis of that is. We're going to have to tweak that, obviously. But then there's the tourism and the economic development. I think were the two I was most concerned with, what that structure might look like for, because there's there's going to be an advisory committee for each of these services to the Regional Service Commission. And I can't expect out of 8 board members that there's going to be board members on all of these committees, because you also have your own council. Like it's unrealistic expectation. So the reason it's here is I want people to think about who should be on these committees. I struggle a little bit with both of those, who the ideal people would be. But I do need to appoint some kind of a committee, or have the board appoint the committee next year. So I'll leave that there.
So,
Well, when you're done talking about the committee, I do have something I'd like to ask a question on, but it's not the committee. Okay, sorry.
so are you able to bring up one of those committee structures that we talked about for economic development? We, yeah, sorry.
You got a hand up.
Yeah. Harvey, you go ahead.
So you're asking about committee members. Are you talking about like maybe, tourism related business owners, or you're talking about people right off our councils, or? I'm just trying to get an idea.
It'll be,
I think that's what I'm asking, is should this be, council members from municipalities? Should it be tourism operators? Should it be a mixture of those things? Should it be?
I know for us on the island, we had one counselor is involved in the tourism. She'd probably like to do it, but there's also another lady here that kind of handles a lot of the stuff where she owns a shop, because we have no tourist information center or anything anymore, right? So I'm thinking in my mind that she would be somebody I would send, kind of thing. So that's kind of, I think it could be a mixture, if you ask me, maybe voted on by the council of that area or whatever. And that would be my thought, I guess. Just from our experience, I don't know what everybody else, like say Alan's got a great thing going there anyway, as far as tourism stuff, that stuff going. So he probably has different ideas than me, but I think for us, I'd like to be able to have a little flexibility, I guess, not just our council, but that's my 2 cents, I guess, for what it's worth.
yeah, that's good. Bonnie had her hand up next. Sorry, Bonnie?
I'm just going to echo exactly what Harvey said. I think it should be at the discretion of each municipality, entity, whatever we're calling them right now, to nominate who they think is best suited to represent them on the committee. I think each entity should have a representative there, along with the LSD. It should mirror the board, but I don't think it necessarily has to be people who are sitting on the board.
Okay. Sam?
I just want to make a comment or suggestion. When you appoint members to the Pratt committee, you advertise it. And you ask people to provide their credentials, basically, and how they would fit into that Pratt committee. So why couldn't that be incorporated? I would agree with Bonnie that it should be somebody from each entity or council or at large or whatever. As far as the numbers go, as far as the credentials go, I think that this board or the next board should sit down, maybe if you're planning management committees or whatever, and decide what credentials are required to sit on those committees. And then put that out as a proposal, asking people to volunteer for it and provide their qualities, just like you do with Brad. Because otherwise, just to say, let's appoint, whoever, then you're not sure you have the right people on there until they're on. So that way you would have a chance to kind of, the board would have a chance to kind of review everybody that, sort of applies for it and then make some choices or recommendations. That's,
Yeah.
I'm more here for if there was an application.
yeah.
Alan?
Yeah, I hear where we're going with a mix or whatever, but not all councils and mayors are economic experts or tourism experts. So you need to have the leaders in your community be part of this. Again, I bring it back to, I'll use examples and what I know. Future St. Stephen does not have any counselors on that board. They're business leaders. And the mix of them is important as well. There's different value from each board member. So yeah, if you expect council to be part of that, I don't believe that'll work. You're going to get your one-offs that they actually do have a lot to bring to the table, but not always. So you can't really rely on councils and to create that board. That won't work.
Yeah. How we decide on that, lots of good ideas there. And so I don't want to interfere with that discussion right now. What I was looking for more today was, what do we expect that committee structure to look like? As we know, other communities have gone with Excite or some of these other larger organizations to do that for them. We've chosen at this point not to go that way. What I would like to propose is that we have the RSC at the top. we have an individual that we are hiring to represent us, or the board. And then I would like to have him looking after, the entity, representatives. So he will meet with those on a regular basis. Doesn't matter, once a month or however you guys want to do it. But I think we need to have that structure in place so that when we move forward, we have some idea of who is going to be engaging in this. Not from a perspective of Joe Blow is going to do it, but from the perspective of each of the entities will have someone engaged in that committee or board, whatever you want to call it, that will be representing each of the entities. In addition to that, we need to somehow make sure that we have Future St. Stephen and that we have CDEC involved because they're already in place. And there may be other organizations out there that I'm not aware of or we're not aware of. Those are the two main that I am aware of. So I don't want to lose the capability that they bring to the table. But in addition to that, we still need to have all the other entities at that committee. So what I was proposing was that we fit that structure. So we have, number one, we have the RSC. Just below them, we have the individual that we're going to hire to work on behalf of RSC. Then each of the entities will have a representative on that committee, as well as Future St. Stephen and CDEC.
I'm sorry, I'm a bit confused. Like, this name that you fixed have been decided. Why CDEC is coming up again? I'm a bit confused because I spoke to several people and they say why this thing even came in the first place. We have several organizations in our community, and only CDEC came here for a presentation last time. Have you invited all of them? Have you invited, for example, the board of commerce, whatever we have in Eastern Charlotte, to come and speak? I don't understand. I'm taking an issue on that because I spoke to several people from my council, and they're very concerned about how this thing happened, how we kind of fix the solution before even having examined the whole option. So
Well, just to come back to that, as I said, CDEC and Future St. Stephen are the only two I'm aware of. But you guys as board members may be aware of several other groups that might be interested in being involved in this. So it's, I'm trying to determine what the structure would be rather than who's going to fit into that structure at this point. Each entity is going to have its own decision to make as to how they determine or how this board determines who will sit on that. So I throw that out there for discussion as a possible solution for the structural to start. That doesn't mean that it's going to last forever. It's what we go into it in January. We all go back to our communities and say, okay, we need to bring forth someone who's going to represent us for economic development. That way we can start that search to locate that individual and then bring him on board, bring him up to speed with what's going on, what his duties are going to be. And then we can have him come to that first meeting to determine how that board or that committee structure is going to be implemented. But initially, I don't think any entity here does not want to be represented. And for Alan and St. Stephen, I can't imagine that I would have an economic development committee that wouldn't have input coming in from Future St. Stephen. That doesn't compute to me. So if you in your organization, if you have 2 or 3, well, then your council could determine which one or which 2, or that's going to be.
To some extent, we have been caught by the speed of the events. I mean, we had this thing. I mean, I saw the people that I know from CDEC gave the presentation, and then we spoke among ourselves and we said, wait a minute, I mean, how this thing is happening. So I'm just telling you, as someone who spoke to my council, we do have reservation about how we have been predisposition on
Are those other organizations that you're talking about, are they delivering economic development? Because what we were looking for here was groups that we're delivering already, like to see that in the future St. Stephen's.
I'm going by a record of past performance.
Okay.
And I hear from Mayor McEachran speaking about his organization. I heard Mr. Craig speaking the other time. And I when we spoke it among our council, we said, wait a minute, I mean, yeah, there's an organization in our community who has worked for 4 years, 5 years, but if you see what has been achieved, basically they have just financed their operation for 5 years.
Yeah.
If this is what we consider as the threshold from actually selecting a group, then that's fine. But if we have some higher expectations, maybe we need to look a bit broader, and maybe we should ask Mayor McEachran to see what he can offer us. And that's the point.
And that, John, was why we had the two organizations come in and brief us on what they might be able to do, what they do. Because we were looking at, from the perspective of RSC 10, did we want Ignite or some other organization coming in from Fredericton or St. John to run our economic development? I think the consensus was that we wanted to do it more in-house rather than go to these organizations. So what we thought was we would have CDEC and Future St. Stephen come in and talk to us about what they might offer. And I didn't get a warm and fuzzy that the board was looking to go to one or the other. They wanted to have, to start out with, they wanted to have their own representative so until we could get our feet underneath us and then determine how we wanted to move forward. So what I was thinking was we would look at this from that structure that I proposed, and then for the first year, or maybe the first half, or I would suspect the first year, we have all those groups, all those entities working together to try and figure out how we can benefit from each other. Maybe that will come down to saying, maybe Future St. Stephen should take the lead. It's kind of a structural, personality-driven organization when it comes to that kind of stuff, and we don't know how that's going to pan out until we actually sit down and start talking amongst ourselves how that's going to work.
I mean, you mentioned the two agencies that they have the long-term contracts. Is there any possibility, for example, someone from them can come and tell us what they sell, and we can actually figure them out together, compare them with Future St. Stephen, CDEC, and the other one. I mean, it's a small exercise to actually go through another potential candidate come and sell his wares.
Yeah, we actually did that with Hollis went and had a chat with Envision in St. John, because we did want to look at that aspect of it. But it's always been my fear. It's like, not to say anything about Harvey going to Fredericton, I don't mean to say that. But I find if you're a smaller entity and you go and you associate yourself with a larger entity, sometimes you're kind of like the flea on the elephant's back. And I wasn't, nothing against Envision or anything like that, but I just find that if you're associated with a larger organization, you tend to take back seat. And I didn't want to, I don't think from a consensus I got around this board was that we wanted to go that way. But maybe I read it wrong.
Did you have a discussion where I missed it?
We did. We actually discussed that at our.
Had a discussion?
Yeah.
Did you actually have a discussion where people ask to express, the gentleman here or the other gentleman, to actually say, we have this option, and maybe you can actually get the gentleman to come and give us a 15-minute presentation next time. See what they sell, how much they want from that. But that's a minimum due diligence in my book.
Folks, the reality is we are approaching 2 months behind schedule. We have had plenty of time to consider a whole variety of options. We need to make a decision about the delivery mechanism for economic development and tourism promotion. And that decision needs to be made tonight. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, and I know I'm going to be disliked by everyone for saying this, but Ryan Donahue, the deputy minister, was part of this call last week and made it clear that we needed to make a decision on this, and we do.
I want to correct you on one thing. You just said we had plenty of time. I call bullshit on that. We did not have plenty of time on this file because we haven't had it long enough. We didn't even know it existed.
Yes. Exactly.
The deadline on determining these services was June 30th. I'm assuming you've discussed it prior to this evening. I'm assuming you've had presentations from the two economic development organizations that exist within the Southwest. I'm assuming there have been discussions with Envision. I'm assuming there's been consideration by Hollis and Ken about different options that could be considered. And we're here tonight with a presentation by the executive director and a recommendation as to the approach we should take on a delivery mechanism for each of those two services. We are 7 weeks behind. We have to make a decision. We have to make a decision. We have to incorporate some dollars into the budget. We have to get a budget through so that entities can craft their budgets in time to be in place for 2023. Unfortunately, I have to deliver that news, but it is the reality that we're having to deal with.
Not like the election.
Can I just say something, guys? Listen, Al's absolutely right. There's been two transition people like you through here. We have not had the same advantage the other groups have had. I'm sick and tired of people coming down and threatening me. You got that? I don't like being threatened.
It's not a threat. It's not a threat.
It's a threat. And you guys have been doing it from the start. You've been coming down strong arming. Either you do it or we'll make the decision for you. So guess what? I'm out. Okay? You guys can make whatever decision you want. I'm done for tonight. I'm so mad and so frustrated. So I'm just.
It's not a threat. It's simply saying that the objective of the meeting tonight was to discuss and arrive at a consensus on the delivery mechanism for economic development and tourism promotion. The budget will be discussed at a future meeting. Hollis indicated some preliminary budget numbers so that people would have a sense of what the costs might be for these new additional services that are being mandated by the province. I'm simply indicated that we have to make we can't keep punting this football down the field, because if we do, we're going to miss other deadlines, which will mean missing other deadlines, which will mean January 1st will come along and we'll be the one RSC in the entire province that's way, way, way behind the ball. So we need to make some decisions.
We are not the only one in this province that is having issues.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. But we're the ones who can deal with the issues that we're facing. That's what I'm saying. So let's deal with them. Let's try and make a decision as to which approach we're going to use. As I've indicated, and I think Hollis has indicated the same thing, I think the safest approach in terms of the delivery mechanism and the most prudent approach is to do it internally. Try that, develop a bit of a game plan. If through the course of next year it's determined that there should be another model that's adopted and implemented by the board, absolutely, go for it at that time. But I think it's the simplest way to do it.
Do you realize that you're talking to a group of people that we have an election coming up in November, right? And you got us working on this. How do you expect any one of these great people around this table that are working hard for the communities and to take on this role and make these decisions that literally are ramming down our throats? And I'm not talking directly at you, sir. I'm talking at the province. But it is driven down our throats. And meanwhile, we've been out campaigning for the last few months, just talking to the residents and telling them this is going to be this way and that way. And then it's going to all blown to shit now, because now we're raising taxes. I told them the taxes shouldn't go up because we're sharing services. Now we're talking about raising taxes. And when you start raising taxes on the rural residents around me and my entity, you're killing me. And don't take this the wrong way. I am passionate about what I did for my community for the last 11 years, and I'm pretty proud about what I've done with, we have done, but we did it the way we're doing it, and now we're hitting the reset.
Yeah.
And I like to take issue.
You're making some good points. I agree. I like
to take issue with that urgency that all of a sudden today we have to decide about the energy they're going to deliver. I like to take issue because I know there are RSCs that are even
behind us in terms of progress. I was speaking with the mayor, which is a bit outside of Moncton, and they didn't even have any sense of what they're going to do. So we are not really, I mean, the bad apple in this basket. I mean, we are trying to cope with something that has been thrown at us. So I don't see why we have to actually make that decision tonight about who's going to deliver what now. We got some figures that to leave about budget, and I think we can actually discuss that and perhaps agree. But nailing everything today with the way that they came, like the previous meeting, when I spoke to my council, they were really concerned about how this thing happened. Why we are faced with these two options without even having any discussion about clearing these options. Like, for example, I don't want to take any issue with the executive of CDAC, but I mean, when the only credential is presented that we have been good in actually raising money for paying for our salaries for the last 3 years is the standards that which we select an organization, maybe we are doing the wrong thing here.
I would just like to interject here. A lot of good discussion, a lot of good points. But to me, we had to go through this process. We've gone through the process. We're now finding ourselves in a situation where I think we're ready to make a decision on the structure. It's a safe approach. It's an approach that we can adopt. Everybody stays engaged. All the entities stay engaged. When we meet again in the new year, those new entities will all have a say in economic development and within the tourism development. We don't give it away to an outside agency, we hold it within. And that way we still have control over it. And when we go to make things work, if we find it's not working the way we want, then we still have the ability to change within house. Whereas if we give it to a larger organization outside, if we enter into a 5 or 10 year agreement with those guys, we have no flexibility. So
they don't offer 1 year contract? Like
all we're doing here, there's no contracts.
no, I'm saying the Envision or whatever you spoke, they don't offer like a short-term contract for 1 year if we need to actually talk to them?
They might, but I think what Ken's trying to say is that's part of the discovery process that we're going to go through next year
Exactly.
at the first of the year. So what we're deciding here tonight is that we're not going to make a final decision. We're going to go through a good process at the first of next year to actually figure out what the real solution is, because you can't do it here tonight. So I think that's where we are.
I don't think, sorry, Al, go ahead.
So I want to go back to, we're talking about bunting the football down the field, and I'm going to take that comment and use it. You know, there is a time that we got to build a team and not pay for the superstars right now. And I feel that we're raising the taxes, and it's just like reaching out and paying for the big star player instead of building the team from the ground that we have. So I see that we're building the team and we're staying local. Okay, I'm kind of good with that. Or staying in our region, but I still don't agree with the increase of cost. I've been told from the minister himself when he was here, when he started this, that this is not going to raise taxes. We have been telling our citizens this for so long. I don't want to raise our taxes. It's mud on my face for telling them that. And they'll make up their own reason why their taxes went up. They're not going to know it went to economic development or if it went to recreation, which they will believe that. They'll think, oh yeah, you got your money for your civic center now. That's what I'm going to get thrown at me. And I think we should just, again, settle down, do it for the same cost that's costing us today, right now, and then build it. Period.
It's costing us nothing now. I don't know how you want me to do this with no money.
It is, no, Hollis is costing me right now. I'm paying. I'm already paying for economic development and tourism.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into an argument here, but
no, there's nothing to argue about. I know what I'm paying for.
I have a mandate I have to deliver, and
Yes.
I can't do that. I was quoted in the Telegraph Journal. None of the stuff is free. Whatever the minister said is what he said, but we all know that's not reality. I have to do the stuff. It's mandated by the province. It's part of legislation. And I can't do it for nothing. It's impossible.
Yeah, but you have more people in your pool now, Hollis. You should be able to do it for the same value. That's what I'm not understanding.
Where's the?
That's what we were sold on with Mr. Olam.
Well, if you want to believe Minister
Where'd that go?
Olam, that's up to you, man, but the reality is I can't do stuff for no money. It's impossible.
Harvey,
I understand you guys.
I understand where Alan's coming from. Oh, I better not do that. Anyway, so what you're saying is the province is still gonna collect their money for it. And then we're gonna collect that money from the RSC for the same thing. So I think that's where he's getting at. Like the province should be giving the money to the RSC. Because why do we need a double representation in tourism? And we already know they suck at it. So I'll tell them just to give us that money. And, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what he's saying. I understand where he's coming from. And he's 100% right. We're double dipping.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you at all, Harvey, on that. But
I'm like Alan. When I went to the meeting with the minister, I think the same day he did, he said it's not going to affect Campbell one bit. We're already, it's going to cost us the most, it seems like now. So I don't know. Anyway, I see where you're coming from.
At least he came to your municipality, he did not come to St. George. So.
I know, I feel the same way you guys do, but I have to deal with the reality that we're dealt here. The province has come down and said you were going to take on these mandates. Hollis has put together what he estimates is the costing that's going to be. We want to try and stay in-house as much as possible within the region so that we're not going out. I, like the rest of you, I'm going to be going back to my council and saying that this is going to cost more money. So I'm going to have to try and find money elsewhere to compensate or charge the addition. No different than the rest of you guys. But we have to come to a conclusion. And whether we say it's next week or the week after, it's really not going to change. It's only what we do tonight is going to affect tomorrow. So what I look at is we need to just have we've already gone through most of the stuff, a broad consensus of the committee structure, and then we move on.
From the point of view of Eastern Charlotte, we don't have the Black Harbor here. I don't know if Black Harbor is on the other side there somewhere. But we would like to have a discussion about it because things have moved very, very fast. I mean, a lot of things happened since last week that we did not even have a chance to. I just had the opportunity to talk to my council, and the feedback that I'm bringing right now to this table is what I received from my council. How? Why? I mean, these are the reactions. Hearing that the deadline that we have to meet tonight, I'm saying, I'm getting almost like wait left. There must be a better way than actually saying, today got to be happening. I mean, there must be a better way.
I say call the minister's bluff and put it off for next week. It's obvious that a lot of people are not happy with this, and they're not happy with the lecture that we got from Maurice either tonight. At least I'm not. This punting the football down the field, you guys made the field, not us. You made the timelines, not us. So you're laying it all on us as though we've done something wrong here. We've all worked very hard. So if it takes another week, let it take another week and let the minister do what he wants to do. That's my opinion on it.
Well, maybe I'll address that. Look, I regret that you took my comments in that vein. It was not my intention. I regret that you interpreted them in that way. What I was trying to get at was the same thing that I'm trying to get at with RSC 11, and that we'll do so next Monday night when Ryan joins me at that meeting, where we need to make a decision on the delivery mechanisms that we're going to use for economic development and tourism promotion. That's the point that we're trying to make.
I have no problem with
We have
making
the-
this.
We have put forward what we believe, and not one person has contested, that the mechanism of doing it internally is the most prudent approach to take going forward, one which allows us to make alterations to that a lot easier, that if we engage in a contract with a third party, which would be doing it on a third-party delivery basis and likely into an agreement that could be 3 years, could be 5 years, could be 10 years, that would be very difficult to break. If you do it internally, if you do it internally.
The problem with that, that's all well and good. The problem with what we're facing here tonight is that along with what you've said with the structure, we're faced with a $750,000 budget, 2 new employees, and the perspective of hiring consultants and service providers and so on. So as the good mayor of St. George has stated, this is all happened very fast.
Okay, I understand and I appreciate that. So perhaps what we should do is we should break the two things up. This was not intended to be a budget presentation by Hollis. It was intended to give you an idea of what the costs would be for the new services based on his best projections. So maybe what we do is tonight, if we can get a consensus that the delivery mechanism for each of those two services would be best done if it's done internally. And then when the whole budget comes forward, we can have a good hearty debate and exchange on the content of that budget.
Fair enough, I would go along with that.
So that implies that you're gonna give us some time to see what are the internal possibilities. Because what I have heard last week was definitely not something that the town of St. George can agree. I mean, I have not had any chat with Alan McKicken there, the mayor, as to what if he can provide something. But right now, essentially, we got one presentation last week without any warning. I saw CDAC giving us an option, but there may be other options around here. And I don't feel that if we engage someone from St. John who has expertise in this, would be an outsider. We are close to. I mean, no, seriously, I mean, St. John is not an outsider. If there is an expert in St. John that can actually support our endeavor and he can offer a better service or has better credentials, I don't see that thing as a negative.
So I guess the advantage of the internal model is it gives you more options than if you lock in with an independent third-party organization. If you lock in with an independent third-party organization, the very strong likelihood is that you need to engage in that organization over several years. They need to make commitments to hire a number of individuals to do the work, et cetera, et cetera. So it's likely a longer-term commitment. If you choose the internal delivery model, it allows you the maximum degree of flexibility, because after you've done the strategy, if it's confirmed next June or July that it would be better to outsource that work to a third party and do it over a period of time, you have the flexibility to do that. Whereas if we entertain Envision in 2 weeks from now, and we all like Envision to do that work in the Southwest, we're likely going to have to enter into a longer term agreement with them. And then come next June or July, if that's not working, we're locked into that agreement. Whereas the internal model gives us a far greater degree of flexibility. That's the point I was trying to make.
Can you have the option to actually check in what you are saying to see if that's true or if it's valid? Like maybe they can offer us a contract of 1 year.
I know that the proposal in Western Valley by Ignite is for a 5-year agreement. I know that the proposal for Ignite in the Capital Region is a 5-year agreement. I know that the pedal agreement that is already in place with Envision and with Ignite, that's also going to be in place with other either third-party organizations or RSCs, is going to be for likely a 10-year term. So you can't engage in these organizations for 6 months and say, oh, well, you had to hire 6 people and now you have to let them go. You can have much more flexibility if you use the internal model. That's the point I was making.
Alan, one last comment. Hopefully last comment.
Yeah. So I'm still struggling with this, and I'll deal with it by just asking a question, because here we are talking about a larger entity coming in that, using that as an example. I bet you if I asked Harvey, Jamie, you Ken and McAdam, how you felt about St. Stephen, future St. Stephen, running your economic development or your tourism. You would feel the same way I would feel as a larger organization coming and taking us all over. It's the same feeling. And the problem is when you have a local, and when I say local, it has to be in your entity because they're passionate. You have to have someone that's passionate about taking on this cause, not just some person that's working for a large organization saying, oh, they'll get to it tomorrow, because that don't happen in this business. You got to have someone that has a lot of skin in the game, and it could hold true to Harvey over in Campobello or Bonnie and Graham and Ann, that they're going to think that future St. Stephen or CDAC don't have any skin in the game on the other parts, and they're not going to feel the love. So I don't want to deal with that later down the road, even if we do pick this way. That's I just don't. It just don't feel right. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand, Alan. Are you suggesting that you prefer an internal model to engaging an organization like Envision? Is that what you were suggesting?
No, I just want to stay the way I am, but that's not happening. I get that, but I'm just trying to spin it so the others understand the same thing. I know if I ask them separately after this call how you feel about future St. Stephen leading your pack, they're not going to feel the same way as I would feel.
I have a problem with the following. We had that in St. George just before the Honorable Minister brought the amalgamation. We had an economic development advisory committee. And when essentially they cut us our leg and say, guys, forget it. Next year you are out. We said, why the heck bother? And we abolished it. Okay. There is the CDEC on the other hand that had money funding and continue to get funded. And that was the accomplishment. But fundamentally, we don't have evidence that CDEC may be better than our advisory committee on economic development. And to me, committing right now or an option that the only thing that I have on the table is the fact that they were able to get funding to fund themselves. I feel very uncomfortable with committing to a long, even a year.
I know you're coming. You keep coming back to see that, but
Ken,
yeah.
Is there confusion that there's no contract with anybody?
No, and that's what I was.
See that confusion, St. Stephen.
That's what I was going to say. This internal thing. I am not proposing that we go to CDAC. I'm not proposing that we go to future St. Stephen. What I'm proposing is that we start off with our 8 entities, and perhaps bringing in a representative from CDAC or a representative from future St. Stephen.
Or Envision, or whatever you want.
Yeah. Or the advisory council of St. George, who had one. They had
you can bring that individual in.
That's what I'm saying. But right now we have 2 options.
Yeah.
We never consider, the fact that we had a group of volunteers, the town, who have stepped forward and say, we can help with economic development.
No, please don't take it that way. That was never the intent. You have a knowledge of what's going on in your community and who is serving your community as an economic development advisor or implementer. I don't know who that individual is, but your council does. So if you feel that person should be representing your entity, by all means, when we have our internal group that gets together, that's your individual that you bring forward.
And it's not only St. George. I mean, I have to go in Penfield, maybe have a guru.
But every community.
Guru in Penfield. I know the lady who does media things, promotions and marketing.
But every community would have that opportunity, right? To bring their person forward that they wish to have them represented by at this new committee. And that way we have the flexibility that we can maneuver around. Maybe we get this group together and we try doing economic development. Number one, we share information as to what everybody's doing. And then how can we integrate those and how can we learn from each other? At the end of the year, we may come to the conclusion that this is not working, that we need to go to a larger organization with a broader sense of experience or whatever. But we need to start somewhere. And I think that we should be approaching this from a cautious perspective. I don't think this board wants to enter into a long-term agreement with any large organization, whether it be future St. Stephen, CDAC, or Ignite, or all these others. because we're not quite sure what we're looking for just yet. So what I would like to do is, in that proposal, is I would like to have consensus saying that we have our individual, and that individual will set up that committee. All you guys will make your own decisions as to who's gonna represent you on that committee. And then we'll see if it works. And if it doesn't work, then we find another model.
So who's the committee? I don't understand.
It's gonna be someone that you bring forward, it's gonna be somebody that maybe you bring forward, somebody I bring forward, and we'll see if it works.
Yeah.
So I think,
Harvey's got his hand up.
Harvey.
We need to wrap up.
yeah. Harvey? You're muted, Harvey.
There, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
That's the only way that we can keep the cost to what we want it and stuff is if we set up a committee, just like our health committee or whatever it is. I can't remember what it's called, but you know, the other committees we have at the RSC, we need to set up one, like you said, get our representatives whoever we want. It's the only way that we're gonna be able to control how much we spend and whether every community is getting treated fair. Now, to me, it wouldn't matter if Alan's group representatives, as long as we, you know, you could go to a meeting or get some feedback. But the only way that everybody's gonna feel involved is if we have a representative, and that's the only way we're gonna be able to control it. Because you start hiring out a third party person, next thing you know, the next year their expenses are a little more, so they're charging you more, and that, you know, seems to be how it works.
so I get the sense from around the board that the consensus is that we want to stay with an internal. Is there anybody that wants to, I guess, question that, dispute it? Can we take a consensus around the board that we want to go with an internal?
So first of all, can I just say, explain, okay, an internal is basically, it's gonna be someone working here and the RC board. An external would be someone like CDEC, Future St. Stephen, or Envision. A combination would be a combination of Future St. Stephen, CDEC, or Envision. The one that they're recommending is the internal. Okay, so if there's some confusion about who's involved with the internal, well, the only people involved with the internal is the board and the employee. There's no third party. So if there was some confusion about that, that needs to be I hope that's understood now. It's an internal model of the three that's being recommended by all of us.
You'd have to add in your executive director, don't you?
Yeah. Okay, is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
I'm getting nods around the table.
Yes.
Okay, we'll go with that one. Was there anything else that we needed to?
You know what we're holding?
This evening?
Do you know what we're holding?
Well, we have an internal committee.
Internal committee.
Okay.
Representative from each municipality.
I want to thank everybody for coming this evening. I know we, some people might say that I let the conversation run a little. I don't worry about that. I like to get people's thoughts out on the table and hear what they've got to say. And I think that way we get the best decisions. So because we're now been 2 hours and 20 minutes, I just want to say thank you very much, everyone, for coming tonight and participating. I think we have a way forward, and thank you.
Did we just vote? Are you kidding me? That was not a vote.
Good point. Good point.
Is there another?
If we voted, just tell me the yeas and the nays, please.
I move we adjourn.
That's understood.
Alan, we were looking for consensus. Thank you.
All right.
Gonna vote for external.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
All right.
I get it.